I think by this point, it's safe to say that if you're still watching these spooky movie recommendations, then you're a horror movie fan, or at least you're aware of them enough to know the rules and tropes of the genre. You've seen enough horror films to know that if kids go up to the cabin in the woods, then they're going to get attacked. You know there's going to be the smart one, the dumb jock, the pretty one, and the normal, relatable one. You know who's going to die first, you know who's going to survive, you can even write the dialogue out in your head before you see it. Hey, I love horror movies, but I'll admit, that's a problem with so many of them. Which is what makes me love Cabin in the Woods so darn much. Now, today's episode is probably going to be short because if you're one of those lucky few who have not had this film spoiled for you, then I'm not going to be the one to do it. In fact, if you haven't seen this movie yet, then just take my word for it, that's great, and go out there and watch it right now before you accidentally read the spoilers for it in the comments below, because I know that's how the comment section works. So I'll try and keep this as spoiler-free as possible, but it starts off with 5 friends going up to a cabin in the woods, which is meant to be a replica of the house from the Evil Dead films, which lets you know right off the bat, this film is made for horror movie fans. But when they arrive there, each of these kids begin to act a little odd. The star athlete is now acting like a dumb jock, and his girlfriend is now acting far more, let's say, loose. Then strange things start to come to life in the woods, and that's all I can say. Trust me, I would love to go into detail about what this movie is really about, but you have to discover it for yourself. But I will say, this is a movie that is designed for horror movie fans, as it comes in and explains all the tropes that you have seen in all of these movies. It's a film that takes horror movies apart while at the same time celebrating everything that makes them special. And what I love most of all is that it explains all the dumb decisions that you see in these types of movies, but it explains them in a way that makes you go, oh my gosh, that's genius. This movie satirized horror films so well that it makes me look back at almost every horror film I've ever seen and say, oh yeah, I bet that's exactly what's happening. I'm not kidding. To this day, when I watch a horror movie, I will always have that one moment where I stop and think, this is that thing in Cabin in the Woods, isn't it? It's totally the Cabin in the Woods situation, isn't it? But it's not just a good horror flick with tons of great references, although there are tons of amazing references. There's a moment that every horror movie fan will jump off the couch and pause the Blu-ray so that they can soak in every Easter egg up there on the screen at once. And the big character reveal at the end is perfect. But beyond all that, it's also a great comedy. Even if you're not into horror films, I totally recommend watching this because even at the height of tension, I would laugh hysterically at scenes. And the story has a great progression full of twists that actually leave you rooting for characters you were dreading a moment ago. It does a wonderful job of forcing you to ask yourself, what would I do in this situation? Because it really isn't an obvious answer. So you've got all this tension, all these scares, all these jokes, and some great moral questions, and then it all amps up to an ending where they gave me everything I could possibly have wanted. No, seriously, I was watching this for the first time in theaters thinking, man, this movie is great, but it would be perfect if they would just do this one thing. And then the movie proceeded to do that exact thing, and then it kept going and taking it to limits I could never have imagined. This film has one of my top 5 favorite endings for a horror film I've ever seen. Hell, it's probably got one of my favorite endings for any type of movie. So if you have not experienced this film yet, go and see it so that you can understand what the heck I'm talking about, because again, this is a perfect film for fans of horror movies and people who are sick of horror movies. Although, if you're sick of horror movies, you're probably not watching any of THORGIWEEN. But if you are watching us, then thanks for tuning in, and remember that you can follow me on Twitter and Tumblr at Professor Thorgy, and come back tomorrow for the big finale of our week of movie recommendations. Thanks for joining me, everyone, and happy Halloween.